Right now, you are bored. Maybe not at this exact second, but today, at some point, you felt it. That hollow, restless pull, that low-grade itch with no name, the feeling that nothing is quite enough and you don't know why. You probably called it boredom and moved on. But what if that feeling was not a glitch? What if it was the engine? Here is what almost no one talks about. Boredom is not the absence of something, it is a signal. A biological alarm system that your ancestors evolved hundreds of thousands of years before the internet, before cities, before fire. A force so quietly powerful that it may be responsible for nearly every leap in human civilization you have ever heard of. Language, art, religion, agriculture, the wheel, philosophy, music, war, medicine. Every single one of them may have started the same way. Someone got bored and could not stop. Let's go back. Not a few centuries. Much further. Picture your ancestor. 200,000 years ago. They are sitting at the edge of a savanna. The hunt is done. Hunger is handled. The immediate threats, the lions, the rival tribes, the storms, have quieted for a few hours. The body says, rest. The threat detection system says, nothing to solve right now. And then the brain does something strange. It keeps going. This is what neuroscientist Mary Helen Immordino-Yang at the University of Southern California has spent years studying. She calls it the default mode network. It is the part of your brain that activates not when you are solving a problem, but when nothing is demanding your attention. When you are, in the simplest terms, bored. And here is the counterintuitive finding. This network is not idle. It is one of the most metabolically expensive systems in your entire brain. When you are doing nothing, a specific set of brain regions light up and begin working harder than almost any focused task requires. Your brain starts simulating futures, replaying the past, building hypothetical scenarios, testing possibilities that do not yet exist. Your ancestor sitting at the edge of that savanna was not resting. Their mind was running, and the boredom was the fuel. Psychologist Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire conducted a series of experiments that became some of the most cited in modern boredom research. In one study, participants who were made to do deeply boring tasks, copying numbers from a phone book by hand, then tested on creative problem-solving, dramatically outperformed people who had been kept mentally stimulated. The bored group generated more original ideas, more unexpected connections, more divergent thinking. Boredom, Mann found, forces the brain into a state of hungry searching. When the environment offers nothing, the mind turns inward. And inward is where invention lives. Now bring that finding back 200,000 years. Your ancestor is sitting, bored. The default mode network is running, and the environment is asking nothing of them. So the brain starts asking its own questions. Why does fire behave that way? What would happen if you tied two sticks together differently? What does that sound mean? The one the birds make right before rain. What if you drew the shape of the animal on the cave wall before you hunted it? That last question produced something extraordinary. The cave paintings at Lascaux, France, are approximately 17,000 years old. The paintings at Altamira, Spain, are between 14 and 36,000 years old. The red ochre engravings found in Blombos Cave in South Africa are over 75,000 years old. None of these images were created for survival. None of them fed anyone. None of them protected anyone from predators or weather. They were made because someone, in a quiet moment between the urgent demands of staying alive, asked, "What if I made this?" That is boredom doing its work. But the story does not stop at cave paintings. Trace this thread forward. Around 12,000 years ago, something shifted. Humans who had spent hundreds of thousands of years as nomadic hunter-gatherers began staying in one place. Agriculture began to appear independently across the globe, in Mesopotamia, in China, in Mesoamerica, in the Fertile Crescent, within a few thousand years of each other. Historians call this the Neolithic Revolution and debate its causes endlessly. One cause that rarely makes it into the conversation: time. Hunter-gatherer societies, based on decades of fieldwork by anthropologist Marshall Solins, worked an average of 15 to 20 hours per week on food acquisition. The rest of the time, unstructured, open, Quiet. Modern humans in industrialized nations average 47 hours of work per week and still feel like they have no time. Your ancestors had more blank hours in a week than most people today get in a month. And in those blank hours, sitting by rivers and watching water move and noticing that certain plants grew better in certain soils, something began to form. An idea. A question. What if you could make the food come to you? Boredom built civilization. And then civilization declared war on boredom. That is where things get strange. The moment humans started living in organized societies, they started producing entertainment. The ancient Romans had gladiatorial games. The Greeks had theater festivals that lasted days. Ancient Egypt had festivals, games, music, storytelling competitions. Mesopotamia had taverns. Every civilization that emerged independently on this planet immediately built systems to fill the quiet. Because quiet is uncomfortable, and it is supposed to be. Boredom does not feel good. That is not a bug. It is a design feature. Philosopher Andreas Elpidoru at the University of Louisville has argued that boredom functions as a motivational state, specifically one that signals a mismatch between what your environment is offering and what your mind is capable of. You are bored when your potential exceeds your current situation. Boredom is not the feeling that nothing matters. It is the feeling that something more must exist. That distinction changes everything. When you were a child, boredom was the condition that produced your most vivid imaginary worlds. It was the feeling right before you built something out of cardboard, or invented a game with rules you made up on the spot, or stared at the ceiling long enough that the cracks in the plaster became the rivers of another continent. Psychologists call this constructive internal reflection. The research is unambiguous. Children who are allowed to be bored develop richer imaginative lives, more self-directed play, and greater tolerance for ambiguity than children whose time is constantly structured. You already knew this. You lived it. And then you grew up, and boredom became the enemy. Look at your phone right now. Not the device itself. The logic behind it. Every feature, every notification, every algorithm, every autoplay, every scroll mechanic has been designed by some of the most intelligent engineers on the planet to do one specific thing: prevent you from ever being bored for a single second. Not because boredom is dangerous, because boredom is expensive. A bored mind is a sovereign mind. A bored mind starts asking its own questions, generating its own content, building its own worlds. A bored mind does not need a feed. It builds one from the inside. A mind that is never bored, by contrast, is perfectly occupied. It consumes what it is given. It follows the path of least cognitive resistance. It is, in the deepest sense, managed. Researcher Jonathan Schooler at the University of California, Santa Barbara, has studied the relationship between mind-wandering and creativity for years. His findings point to the same conclusion as every other researcher in this space. The most creative, most original human thinking happens not during focused work, but during the unfocused gaps between it. The shower, the commute, the quiet minutes before sleep. The moments that your phone now fills. Think about what that means. The great ideas of human history, the ones that changed how people lived, loved, worked, and understood their place in the universe, came from minds that had space. Not unlimited time, not perfect conditions, not specialized equipment, just space. Just the quiet, uncomfortable, productive pressure of having nothing to fill the moment. Your brain is the same brain. Structurally, biologically, you are identical to the person who painted mammoths on a cave wall in the flickering light of a torch. The same default mode network, the same default mode hunger, the same capacity for the restless, generative discomfort that pulls at you when the world goes quiet. The only question is whether you ever let it run. Here is what the research does not say. It does not say to throw away the phone. It does not say stimulation is evil. It does not say you should sit in silent rooms and stare at walls as a spiritual discipline. It says something simpler and stranger. It says that the hollow, restless feeling you have been treating as a problem to be solved is actually a tool. An ancient one that your ancestors used without knowing they were using it to build language and art and agriculture and music and medicine and every form of meaning they ever touched. It says that boredom is not what happens when life is empty. It is what happens when your brain is ready and looking for the next thing that will matter. You have felt this your whole life. You probably called it boredom and reached for your phone. But right now, in this moment, before anything else fills the space, your default mode network is running. Your brain is doing what it has always done. What it was built to do in the long, open hours after the hunt was done, and the fire was low, and the world had gone quiet, and your ancestor sat at the edge of the savannah and could not stop thinking. You are not bored because nothing is interesting enough. You are bored because something extraordinary is trying to happen.